Hi guys, it's Allie. Today I'm going to talk at you about power drill drivers and also the more badass version, which is the drill press. These are ways that you can make holes in various materials like metal, wood, plastic, and glass. And then the power drill driver can also drive screws into those holes. You should definitely have a power drill driver around the house. It's very useful for putting together IKEA furniture or putting up pictures or whatever you might need it for. A quick disclaimer, guys, this is going to be like most of my videos, which are quick, ugly, hastily put together because I don't really have a whole lot of time, and I also don't have access to After Effects very much longer. But they will have plenty of good information, which is mostly stuff that I've learned on my own from experience. I've taught myself, but some of it is, little bits of it are from internet research. But my memory sucks and the internet lies, so some of this info might be a little bit inaccurate. If I'm drastically wrong about something, please let me know in the comments and I can try to fix it. My way of doing things is not necessarily the way of doing things. Other people have other ways, but I'm going to show you what worked best for me, what makes sense to me, and I'm going to help you to find out what is the free way or the lowest cost way of doing these things. Safety is sexy. That's pretty much self-explanatory. Also, I don't own anything. Pretty much any of these pictures are not mine, so please don't sue me. The only thing I do own is exceptional amounts of student loan debt. So, here we go. So, a power drill driver is this guy here on the left that you are probably familiar with. Hopefully you're familiar with it. So, this is a great thing to have around the house. You definitely should have one. We'll talk about the anatomy. We'll talk about how to use them. And then, like I said, the more badass version of that is this drill press. So, this is kind of like it looks small here, but it's taller than, you know, it's like 7 feet tall or whatever. It's like a shop machine that you'd find in a wood shop. And so that's going to give you much better holes and more consistency than you would get from something that's handheld. But yeah, those are your options. And apparently you can actually get a stand to sort of make your power drill driver into a makeshift drill press, which is pretty cool. So, the power drill driver is a more modern, more efficient, more fun version of what people used to have to use, which is one of these hand drills where you're like hand cranking. Oof, no thanks. This one on the right is a little more modern of that same, little more modern version of that same piece of equipment, basically. But I don't know why you would even really want to do it by hand when you can do it with a power drill. I don't know. But this guy has a key which goes in the chuck, and the chuck is what holds the drill bit, the driller driver bit, and we will talk about that in a minute. So when I was looking for pictures of hand drills, I found this one, which I think it's a joke, but there is actually a thing that happens in the world, or it used to happen in certain cultures. They used to actually drill into people's skulls when they were alive, drill into their skulls to release evil spirits. Yeah, not so sure how that went, but oh, my mom is calling me. That's fun. All right, bye, Mom. So there are skulls that you can find in various places of the world that have holes in them, in their skulls. Yeah, crazy stuff. Anyway, that's totally unrelated to power drills. Back to power drills. Don't be confused, by the way, if someone calls it a power drill driver and you only know about a power drill. It's the same thing. It serves both functions, drilling a hole and driving a screw into it. So that's why it's called a drill driver. For short, most people call it a power drill. So we've got the basic anatomy here. A lot of the ones that you'll buy online or wherever will be battery powered, so you'll have a battery pack down here. I'm not a fan of battery powered things. I feel like they don't have the same level of power as something that plugs in. This goes for like vacuums and drills and all kinds of stuff. I feel like they have less power, and then like the battery dies and you've got to recharge the battery, and over time the battery gets weaker, and as the battery discharges, you know, the power behind the yeah it just stops being as powerful, and it kind of starts to slow down and stuff, and that's just annoying. I like things that plug in. I feel like they're more effective at their job. But basically, anyway, the anatomy. So the most important thing is this chuck that you've got here. This is what holds any of the drill bits or driver bits. I'll show you exactly how to do that. It's basically got like 3 fingers inside, and when you screw the chuck, it kind of opens or tightens those fingers around whatever kind of drill bit you're putting in there. The drill bit is obviously what does the work. Driver bit, drill bit, 2 different things, but they both go into the chuck. You've got an on and off trigger, because obviously this is set up like a gun, so of course you've got a trigger. You have a forward and reverse switch, which is nice. So you can go forward, meaning that your drill bit is turning clockwise and you are drilling a hole into something or putting a screw into something. You know, righty-tighty, lefty-loosey. So clockwise is putting like a screw in or tightening a screw. But you can switch to reverse, in which case the drill bit is turning counterclockwise, and so you're either backing out of a hole that you just drilled, or you're bringing a screw back out of a hole. That's the lefty-loosey. So it's nice to be, and you have that right next to your trigger, so you can very quickly switch between the two, which is nice. Yeah. So, like I said, it's a drill driver because it serves two functions. Therefore, you've got drill bits and you've got driver bits. And it's actually not that hard to remember the difference, because if you think about it, a drill bit drills a hole, whereas a driver bit drives the screw into that hole. And so it's good to have a set of drill bits, 5 to 6 or so of them. They all come in different sizes. Those are obvious. It's important to have a set of those. Driver bits, you don't really need a whole set. You can get away with just like 2 or 3 or whatever. These guys right here, these are socket bits. That's a little bit more advanced. You probably aren't going to really use them unless you're some kind of like mechanic or something like that. So don't worry about socket bits. But those are the different types of bits, and they all go into a power drill pretty easily. If you're going to buy a set of drill bits, they kind of come like this usually, and so you've got all your different sizes, the size of hole that they're going to make, and so they might be coated in all kinds of fancy stuff, whatever, black oxide, whatever. But these sets run like $15, $20 bucks, something like that. And again, very important to have around the house for a number of different things. So there's different types of drill bits. The most common one that you're going to use the most is this general purpose twist bit. That's pretty good for pretty much any material. I mean, you're mostly going to be screwing into like drywall or wood. But yeah, that's a pretty general purpose bit. Then you've got other twist bits that just have different types of tips. So I don't know, they're better for certain instances. This is a masonry one, so this is if you're trying to drill into stone or concrete, which probably won't really end up doing. But I mean, it makes sense that it would have to be a heavier duty drill bit to try to go through those kind of materials. A spade bit is for making holes, usually in wood. And then even bigger holes you can make with a hole saw. But these I would definitely recommend you use in a drill press, not in a handheld power drill. Because with a handheld power drill, you're kind of like freehanding it, and you can very easily go off course, or you can stop, you can be on like a 45-degree angle when you mean to be on a 90-degree angle, and so your hole is not straight. It can become a mess, basically, especially if you're trying to use a hole saw or a spade bit. It's gonna be a mess. Especially like a hole saw is really going to grab the wood away from you and just spin it's going to be a mess. So try to only use those with an actual drill press. And then here we've got a Phillips screwdriver attachment, which is a driver bit, so it shouldn't be listed under drill bits, but whatever. Here's a bunch of information you don't need. So this is talking about, again, like the different shapes of the tips of a drill bit. Apparently there are names for every little part of it. Isn't that cute? Somebody needs a hobby. Yeah, so just random information. There's a whole lot more you can find online if you're really into this stuff in like a creepy way. Yeah, like I said, spade bits. So I'm imagining that this is like 1 as in 1 inch, and then you've got 7/8 of an inch, all the different sizes. And then there's the hole saws again. They look pretty friggin' badass. I've actually never used one. I'm a little bit scared of them. I feel like it's going to be a really hard procedure to do that. I don't know. They intimidate me a little bit. But it's very difficult. I will show you. It's very difficult to actually hurt yourself on a drill press. Like I would be impressed if you managed to. So we'll talk about a drill press in a minute. Driver bits. So these are the ones that drive screws in or out of a hole. And obviously different screws come in different shapes. So you've got to have different driver bits. So in general, you've got the two. There's flathead and Phillips head. You can remember which is which because obviously this is a flathead. So that must mean that this one's a Phillips head. And so nowadays you've got a lot more, you've got some security screws. So if a company has a piece of electronics like a phone or a computer or something that they don't want you to open up and get inside and start fiddling around, they'll use different types of security screws, which it's harder to find bits to work those screws basically. But I mean, now that the internet exists, you can just go buy a set of security screw bits like online, and it's not really, so I don't know how much it's really deterring people from opening up, Macs or whatever, but security screws do exist, and they're trying to deter you from getting in there. But you should get in there if like you want to fix something without having to pay a whole lot of money. Whatever. So a bunch of drill bits that help to drive screws. And so you've got screws in all kinds of different, well, I mean, they're generally in a similar shape. They've got what's called threading, these like spiral teeth. That's called threading. That's what really grabs onto the material. And so you've got some slight variations in shapes and different parts of the screw. But generally with a screw, you drill a hole and then you drive the screw into that hole. But there are types of screws that are self-drilling. So you can skip that whole drilling a hole part. You can go straight to putting the screw in, and you'll notice that they have a slightly different base to them that allows them to drill themselves. Ideally, when you drive a screw into something, you want to try to countersink it, which basically just means that the head of the screw is flush with the surface or even a little bit below the surface. It just looks a lot more clean, and you can very easily paint over or do some spackle over top of the screw, and then you've kind of covered it up and hidden the fact that there's a screw there at all. Just like aesthetically, it's cleaner, it's nicer. And so part of countersinking a screw is drilling that hole first, a hole that's slightly smaller than the screw itself. You drill that hole and then you drive the screw into that hole. That's part of how you can countersink a screw into a material, which is preferred. Let's talk about home improvement, repair, whatnot stuff real quick, like screwing into drywall. So if you're trying to hang a picture frame or a bookshelf or something, there's a couple things that you need to know. So the inside of most walls looks like this. So you've got what are called studs, these wooden 2x4s. 2x4s, by the way, it means 2 inches by 4 feet. And you can get all kinds of different sizes. So you can get a 3x4 or 4x4, at different Home Depot or Lowe's or whatever. So this is what the inside of a wall generally looks like in most houses. The studs, these wooden pieces, are generally about 16 inches apart. They're a lot closer in this one. But yeah, so that's what the inside of the wall looks like. And then on top of these studs here goes drywall, which is really just plaster. Plaster is made of, most types of plaster come from gypsum, which is a mineral. And plaster itself is just like a powder that you mix with water, and it solidifies within 20 minutes or so to basically rock hard. But it's still not that strong. I don't know if you've ever played around with drywall. If you punch it or you kick it or something, it'll snap in half. So drywall works well for a house. I mean, it's plaster and then it's paper on both sides of it. So the paper kind of helps hold the plaster together. But I mean, ultimately, you don't want to screw just right into the plaster itself and then try to hang something heavy there. It's just going to fall out. It's going to be an issue. So back to this idea of the studs. So if you're hanging something heavy, you want to try to screw directly into one of these studs because they're strong. They're nice, strong wood. And so how do you find a stud? Because obviously they're on the inside of the wall. They're covered with drywall. So how are you supposed to know where they are? Well, you get this app called Tinder, and then, it's a bad joke, but it's also not a bad joke because Tinder refers to wood bits and dried up leaves and things that you would use to actually start a fire. So it's wood related. It's a good and a bad joke. But anyway, so finding a stud, you've got stud finders that you can buy. Generally, they work. $1,392 for a stud finder. Are you serious? Generally, they work by magnets because you've got screws in each stud, and so if you can find those screws via a magnet, then you know exactly where a stud is, so you can screw right into a stud. But there are other ways to find studs than using a stud finder. Some of these my dad taught me. Some people will knock on the wall. This is not the best. I don't think that's the best way to do it. But if you knock on the wall, you can tell, like, because it should sound hollow. But then once you hit a stud, you'll hear like a more full sound. But I wouldn't recommend doing it that way. My dad will get at the end of the wall and put a flashlight up against the wall, kind of like shining down the wall, and you can see dimples in the wall at different places, and that's where a screw is. Where a screw was, that was then spackled over and painted over. There are always going to be little dimples if you look close enough. And so that'll show you exactly where the studs are. You can also measure. Like I said, most studs are about 16 inches from each other. So you can find one. Outlets are always attached to the side of a stud. So if you find an outlet, you will know that there's a stud right there. And then you could measure 16 inches from there, 16 inches to find a stud exactly where you want to hang your picture. Also, studs will flank air shafts. So that will also help you to find a stud. That's good. And then also if you have a magnet, basically, some kind of magnet you can use. But yeah, there's always going to be dimples in the wall, like little dimples wherever there's a screw that's attached, because those screws are attaching the drywall to the stud. So there's always going to be, they're always a little bit countersunk. And so they get filled in a bit with like a spackle and then paint and stuff. But yeah, so there's different ways to find studs. And you should really try to screw anything into a stud instead of just into the plaster, because there isn't anything behind the plaster. So you want to drill into a stud if at all possible. If you can't drill into a stud, if you have to do it right directly into drywall, you can use an anchor. And so these are reverse barbed plastic, generally plastic, and there's one specifically for drywall. And they usually come with the corresponding screws, because you need a screw that fits that specific anchor. So it's rare that you'll get anchors that don't come with screws, or screws that don't come with their anchors, because you got to get the ones that fit each other. And so basically the procedure here is to drill your hole that's about the same width. The hole is about the same width ish, maybe a little bit smaller, of the anchor itself. And then once you've drilled that hole, you can use like a rubber mallet or a hammer to kind of to hit that plastic anchor into the hole. And then you screw the screw into that anchor. And as the screw goes in, the anchor itself opens up, and its little barbs, its little teeth, grab into the drywall. And so you're getting better grab than you would get from just a screw with its own little threading. You're getting these teeth that are like really digging in there and spreading out, so they really grab onto the drywall. So anchors are really important, especially if you're going to put up like a heavy bookshelf or something like that. Beware that they are really hard to get out, though, to get back out once they're in there. Some people will just they take the screw out and then just leave the anchor in there and spackle over it. Yeah, so anchors are good. If you're hanging something that's really light, then you don't really have to worry too much about trying to use an anchor. But there are also screws that are specifically for drywall as well. So you can always look for those. Here's some more pictures of anchors. So some of them look different, depending on which type you're going for. Also, if you're going to be hanging something, you should definitely try to have a level. They're super cheap, and they just help to make sure that you don't put a picture up crooked. This is a super basic thing that I assume most people know, but maybe not. Basically, to make sure that something is level, you want to get this little bubble right here to be right in between these lines. And then you've got a couple other ones here. So it's just about moving the sides a little bit until you get that bubble right where it should be. So that's a little bit of home repair information. So this is the power drill that I got from my dad and will not be giving back pretty much ever. So you got your trigger here, and you have your forward and reverse switch right there, so you don't have to take your finger off the the handle of the trigger. And then here we've got the chuck that I talked about, which is what holds the drill bits or the driver bits. If you look inside the chuck, you can see that there's 3 little fingers in there. And when you spin the barrel of the chuck one way, the fingers recede into the chuck and open. And if you spin the barrel the other way, they come forward out of the chuck and close down. And so that's the mechanism that holds a bit, basically. So you can put it to a certain, maybe make that a little bit bigger, so you can stick a bit in there. This is a driver bit, and then you know, grab here and twist, and then you've tightened your bit in there, and it's in there. It's pretty firmly. It's not going to come out. So that's how a chuck works. You will see it's the same mechanism in a drill press. Drill presses often come with a key to open the chuck, but this one, you know, power drills, you can really just kind of do it with your hands. So I have a whole set here of little driver bits, but I really just use this one. I don't do a whole lot of stuff with like different sizes of screws and stuff, so I really just get away with pretty much the same driver bit. I do have this set of 5 drill bits though, so you've got all different sizes of those. And I'll talk about that in a second. And then this is a nice set of different types of screws and anchors of different sizes that I got at Aldi for like a couple bucks. Again, if you're going to buy anchors, that they generally come with the screws that would fit into them. So these are all like coordinated with each other. Obviously you have to drill the hole and then put the screw into it. So we're going to look for a drill bit that's actually like just smaller than the screw. So you can kind of line them up like this and try to judge for yourself. I don't know if that's at all, if you can even see that in focus. I'm gonna have to get a new camera because this one sucks. But so you want to work with a drill bit that's slightly smaller than your screw if possible. So you can just kind of like match those up. And so we'll start with, if you're making if you're trying to make a bunch of stuff really fast, it was nice in the past for me to have 2 drills, and so I didn't have to keep switching out drill bit to driver bit. I just had 2 drills with the corresponding bits that I needed. That was really convenient. And so one of the things that you can do, maybe you only want to go so far into the piece of wood, so you can take a look from the side there, and if you need to, you can either kind of take a mental note of where on the drill bit to go to push in until you know is flush with the wood, or you could actually leave a little mark. You could actually put a little mark on the drill bit, so that when you're drilling in there, you know when to stop. That's totally something that you can do. It's a little cheat. Okay, so you've got your wood. You've made a little mark where you want to drill it. So you want to try to do as much of a 90-degree angle as possible. And don't push it in really, really hard right away. Especially if you're working with a smaller drill bit, you can actually snap them. That happens like sometimes, especially if you're trying to drill into like metal or something. So try to be as 90-degree angle as you can. I'm on a weird surface here, so I might go flying off. But yeah, so ease into that mark that you've made, and then you don't have to actually reverse direction to come back out of the hole that you've drilled, because you're not trying to like preserve any threading that you put in there. So you can just do it all just straightforward. So if you've already drilled your hole, you can just kind of stick your screw right in there. It'll kind of hold on. Some driver bits are magnetic, so they might hang on to your screw for you a little bit. And so you want to make sure that your drill is set to go forward, as in to go clockwise. You don't need to give too much push, although also not enough, and the actual bit of the driver bit is not going to really grab the screw as well, and then you're going to strip the top of the screw, like all the little divots in it are going to get like sanded down in a way, and then you're not going to be able to really do anything with the screw. It's going to be stuck because nothing can really grab it. So that's can be an issue. But yeah, so basically just make sure that you're coming down at like a 90-degree angle, and I like to give a couple like quick little bursts just to make sure that I'm going in straight to begin with. And then yeah, so now there's a screw in a piece of wood. To take the screw back out of the piece of wood, you need to turn your drill going back the opposite direction. So the lefty-loosey direction. It's also like 3 a.m., so I probably shouldn't be doing this, living in an apartment building. I'm kind of being loud right now, but so that was going backwards, lefty-loosey, and I was able to take the screw back out. Ooh, it's a little hot. But, yay, that's the super, super, super basics. But it's still stuff that I had to learn on my own, that I shouldn't have had to learn on my own. I should have already known it somehow. So here's, again, the picture of the drill press. So this is basically like a power drill driver. It's as if your drill driver's right here, except with a drill press, you know, it's already on a perfect 90-degree angle. So you're going to get a really consistent, really nice hole. So some of this stuff you really don't need to know. The stop and start button is always going to be here. This is the chuck right here that I talked about. So the thing that holds the bits themselves, and so you're putting the drill bit in here, and like I said, there'll be a key that you can insert into the chuck to open up or close the teeth around that bit. And so you've got a little wheel thing here, which is what you pull toward you to bring the chuck and the bit down into your wood. And your wood should be clamped to this little table. If it's not, if it's just like hanging out there, then the drill press is going to grab it and the whole piece of wood is going to go spinning. So you need to clamp your wood down pretty firmly. If you're drilling into a pretty thick piece of wood, you might wonder, well, I can't move the chuck and the bit anywhere, so how am I going to do this? Every single drill press has a table that you can adjust the height of. So there's always like some kind of mechanism back here that you can bring this actual table itself down or up accordingly with whatever you might need. So those are the basic parts of a drill press. Like I said, I would be really impressed if you found a way to hurt yourself on one of these things. Some people are really afraid of machine shop machines, but this one especially you should not be afraid of. The only way you could hurt yourself is if you have any like dangling jewelry, or you have like some gloves on, like some work gloves, or if you have hair, you know, something like that gets wound around the drill bit. Yeah, that's gonna hurt. You're gonna get your hair pulled out. But that's really the only way that you can hurt yourself with the drill press, so don't worry about it. So now I will show you an actual drill press in person, and we will play with it. Hey guys, this is a drill press. Generally you've got your on and off buttons right here. There might be some other kind of mechanism that you have to switch off first to get the machine to get going. This is the little laser. This guy's got a little laser, so it shows you exactly where the drill bit's gonna go. You've got a little shield here if you're worried about wood getting into your eyes or whatever. This one's got a little light. I almost broke this. And so here's the key that goes into, this is the chuck right here, just like you have on a power drill. And so it has those 3 teeth inside of it. Only the chuck here, it's a little bit harder to open and close, and it should be, because it's going to be going at a, like, you know, it's got more power behind it than a power drill. So you've got a chuck, or a chuck key, sorry. This is the chuck key, which goes into the chuck and helps you open and close the chuck. And then this is your wheel, so basically you're kind of grabbing this and bringing the drill bit slowly down into your wood. You've also got a clamp here, because you want to clamp down. Theoretically, this should be attached to the table. It's not. Anyway, so you should have a clamp, because any piece of wood that you're drilling into, if it's not clamped down to the table really hard, even if you think you can hold it with your hands, it's not safe. The drill press is going to grab it and start to spin it. The whole wood is going to the whole piece of wood is going to come up and like start to spin on you. So you need to clamp it down to the table as firmly as you can. So it's always good to have a clamp there. And again, I said this table, you can lower and raise it. It should have a lock on it back here, and then you can change the angle of it. So basically the lowering and raising idea is that if you have a really thick piece of wood, you can lower the table down itself, since you can't really lower the chuck very well. So let me put a drill bit in this thing, and I will show you how it works. They didn't give me power today, so I can't actually turn it on, but let's put a drill bit in this thing. So here we are looking up real close at the chuck on a drill press. So it's the same way that a power drill chuck is set up. This is just a bigger one. It's got those 3 fingers up there, and when you turn, you can open and close the chuck. With a drill press, you've got a chuck key, because it's a little bit harder to open and close the chuck, so you've got to put the key in there. Generally, we keep the key inside of the chuck just so we don't lose it. Some wood shops will have the key attached on like a piece of wire or something, but that's really unsafe because then it could get caught up in the drill bit and cause, damage to humans or whatever. So I've opened up the drill bit, I've opened up the chuck and put a drill bit in here and closed it again. So you want to try to make sure your drill bit's on as much of a 90-degree angle as possible. We've got your table here again that can be lowered up and down depending on the thickness of your wood. It can also be put on different angles. And so one of the things you can do ahead of time is to pull the wheel down and see exactly how deep your drill bit is going to go in the wood. So you can just kind of like get a sense for where to bring your hand. If you only want to go in a certain amount, you can take a mental note as to how far to bring your hand with the wheel thing here. And then you can also adjust the table for whatever height of wood that you have. This is a piece of plywood. Ideally, you don't really want to drill into the side of a piece of plywood because the whole idea, plywood, it's made of layers, just like 2-ply toilet paper is made of like layers. And so they're basically just layers that have been glued together. And so drilling into them often will just split the layers. We'll get like a nasty hole. It's not ideal to drill into the side of a piece of plywood, but I'm just using it for an example. But yeah, that's pretty much how the drill press goes. You should definitely not just drop the drill bit out of it like that. But yeah, I would be really surprised if you were able to hurt yourself with one of these guys. So basic safety with it basically is just don't have any hair hanging down, don't have any necklaces, any loose clothing, or any kind of work gloves that can get caught up in the blade. So yeah, that's a drill press. You can use all different types of bits in them, including like the hole drilling bits that I showed you. So yeah, drill presses are pretty fun.